two, 1, 2, 3.
Hello and welcome to Ithaca DSA Presents. I'm Wayles Browne. Today we'll be talking to a number of people about nuclear weapons, the danger from them, and the extremely large number of them, and the huge expenditures that they require from our country and other countries in the world. I have several people to talk to. They're all involved in one way or another with peace action of New York State. But our first speaker will be Youko Yamamoto. Youko, I know you're a restaurateur in Kingston, and you're involved with a dance performance for peace, which you'll tell us about afterwards. But could you say something about how you got involved in the nuclear disarmament movement?
Sure. It was very natural. And I grew up in Japan in the 60s and 70s. But the time that I was born was like 12 years after the World War ended. And I was born in the really great city called Yokohama. It's adjacent to Tokyo. So it's like Brooklyn and Manhattan, that kind of place. And Yokohama was one of the two ports opened to trade during Edo period. So naturally, there are many, many foreigners living there. So it's really always very energetic, powerful, and great, cool place. That's where I was born. But I moved to Hiroshima when I was 10. And that's where I started to find out more things about that what it was. But even when I was little, my bedtime stories by my grandmother and aunts quite often included the episodes from wartime, like what kind of bomb just dropped in front of the little holes that they were hiding. And my mom lost the entire classmates. And she was high school student, and her school was very famous in that area, but it was just totally destroyed. Those, the sadness, grief, losing important people and important places, homes and work and schools and entire infrastructures were just a daily conversation. And even though I didn't see any like real evidence of destruction, Tokyo was pretty much already recovered at that point. But when I moved for my father's work to Hiroshima, and I was 11 years old when I visited Hiroshima Peace Museum. And this was before the recent renovation, and that had a very original impact of what could have happened. And I got very, very shocked. I never seen anything like that before in my life. And dolls were walking with, the skins were drooping because the heat of the bomb is so high. It's the highest point. It's the center of the sun. That's high. It gets hot.
So I can see that experience made a strong impression on you. And
yeah, so it's and so that's the time that I started to feel like, oh, this is not something that I should ignore. That's how I started to learn. And I had a classmate had leukemia. Her mother was bombed. So that was our daily life. Many things were happening all over Japan, but August 6th and August 9th, everybody stopped. and pray for the victims of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That's repeated every year.
Those were the anniversaries
Yes,
of the bombing,
exactly.
August 6th, 1945, and
Yes,
August 9th,
exactly.
1945. I want to introduce Diane Swords, but I can introduce you by saying you're involved with the Syracuse Peace Council and Peace Action of New York State. And could you tell us a bit about what Holly found out, and then what you're working on yourself?
Yes, well, I'm working with Holly on the Back from the Brink campaign, and we have an organization of people around upstate New York, and we would love more involvement from the Ithaca area. Holly points out to us that nuclear weapons do not make us safe. The Union of Atomic Scientists set the doomsday clock, which shows how close we are to nuclear catastrophe, at 90 seconds to midnight for the second year in a row, and that's the closest it's ever been. It may well be the most dangerous moment in modern history. There's increasing tension among nuclear-armed countries, climate change, famine, rising authoritarianism, vast economic inequality, and ongoing wars in Ukraine and the Middle East. Russia's president threatened in his 2024 annual speech that more direct Western intervention in Ukraine could lead to nuclear conflict. In 2026, New START, a treaty that limits US and Russian strategic nuclear forces, the last remaining major arms control treaty, is set to expire. The latest generation of nuclear technology can inflict unspeakable devastation. A nuclear exchange between the US and Russia could end civilization. I have to repeat that. A nuclear exchange could end civilization. One nuclear weapon detonated over New York City would cause close to 600,000 fatalities, according to the Federation of American Scientists. Yet, despite mounting global instability, world leaders are not turning to diplomacy. Instead, they're building more technologically advanced weapons. Russia and the US hold the vast majority of weapons, with over 5,000 each, followed by China with 500, and France, the UK, and India and Pakistan with between 170 and 290 each. Israel and North Korea have between 50 to 90, for a world total of 12,121 nuclear weapons. The US has about 100 nuclear weapons based in Belgium, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, and Turkey, NATO countries, and is planning to upgrade the nuclear arsenal in Europe with B-61-12 missiles. These weapons have a destructive power of 83 Hiroshima bombs.
Each
The
one of them, you
US,
mean?
pardon me?
Each one of them has that destructive power.
Each one of them, that's right. The US has about 400 ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles, in underground silos in Colorado, Montana, Nebraska, South Dakota, Wyoming, and California, ready to be launched at a moment's notice. If our incoming missile detection system detects enemy ICBMs hurtling toward our US silos, our president has mere minutes to decide whether to launch all or some of our 400 ICBMs. Either way, the incoming missile cannot be stopped. People will die. Radiation will spread like the smoke from last summer's northern Canada wildfires. The destructive force of each warhead is 335 kilotons. With 3 warheads, one ICBM has a destructive force of 50 times the destructive force of one bomb dropped on Hiroshima, which killed 140,000 people. Survivors face leukemia, cancer, and other effects from radiation. But what if the president receives a false alarm, as we've seen happen before? There's no calling back a launched missile, and we end up with retaliatory nuclear weapons exploding in the Midwest.
And I have to say, there have been false alarms before. And
Exactly.
many thanks to the people who detected that they were false or might be false. Yeah.
Holly, do you want to take it from there?
Oddly, you've come in. Wonderful.
Yes. So, yeah, there's no calling back a launched missile, and we end up possibly with retaliatory nuclear weapons exploding in the Midwest. Besides these land-based ICBMs, the U.S. has 14 submarines in operation, carrying 24 Trident II missiles, 6 to 8 warheads per missile, 9 in the Pacific, 5 in the Atlantic Ocean. Also 94 B-52H bombers, each carrying 20 cruise missiles, 21 B-2 bombers, each capable of carrying 16 nuclear bombs. The U.S. continues Obama's program, launched in 2014, to rebuild the country's entire nuclear weapons complex and replace all major weapons systems with new versions. The plan's nearly $2 trillion cost, a proposed 30-year-long avalanche of weapons industry contracts, continues in the face of devastating global climate crises of ocean level rise, drought, wildfires, flooding, deforestation, desertification, famine, water shortages, with climate and war displaced refugees populations growing exponentially. We must raise public awareness of the growing danger of war among nuclear armed nations and the humanitarian and financial impacts of nuclear weapons on communities.
I'm glad you brought up those figures. Yeah, you have some for the total of all the countries that have nuclear weapons?
Yes. In 2022, it was 82.9 billion combined. In 2023, it was a total of 91.4 billion. So that was, 13% more. And it works out to $2,898 per second on nuclear weapons. The U.S. has over 5,000 nuclear bombs ready to be launched at the order of the president. No restraints from Congress, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, or anyone. The U.S. and other nuclear armed countries continue to divert public funds into weapons of mass destruction and away from the real needs of the people.
Okay, could you get to the treaty just briefly? Because there is an international treaty now.
Yes.
It might help.
Yes. There, in 2021, the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons entered into force. This treaty established a categorical ban on nuclear weapons under international law. The treaty was voted on at the UN with 122 countries voting in favor. Currently, the treaty has been signed by 97 countries, 70 of which have ratified it, making it the law of their land. These countries make clear they reject nuclear weapons, the most destructive of all weapons of mass destruction.
Okay, so that means that nuclear weapons are now illegal, but they're only illegal in the countries that have already signed and adopted that treaty, and the US and the other nuclear weapons countries have not. Jim, could I call on you and introducing Jim Anderson from Peace Action New York State and National Peace Action. And you've got some more figures for us, some more information about how we're spending hand over fist.
Yes, I'll be glad to share. And then, as Holly just mentioned, not only cost factors and the danger, because it is the danger that is driving everyone's attention. But when we start talking about money, when you hear trillions and billions of dollars, people think, oh, that's over my head and have nothing to do with me. But they're totally wrong. When we think about why we're taking this under this kind of action that we're doing, it is because people and planet are losing out when it comes to the nuclear development that is going on. For instance, the money that the Pentagon gets to invest with contractors, or I should say defense contractors, developers, is the people's money. We're not at war, and certainly not at war where we have to take the money from the people to spend it to go fight more. What Holly mentioned about the numbers of nuclear weapons we have indicates we got more overkill than is needed to kill anybody. And with so many on the planet, we need not add more. But when we add more, look what the news say when there's something being built. The US voted to spend so and so trillion to build so many jets, so many types of bombs. And we, the people, have to ask ourselves, that ain't what we need. What we need is money for our human needs. And we look all around our cities, all across the nation, city after city, need money for housing, need money for education, need money for healthcare, need money for building up an outdated infrastructures of many of our towns and rural areas, as well as other cities. So the money is important. And what's important is that the money starts with the people and the people who they choose to elect. No, remember the Congress people who are voting to spend the people's money on towards these weapons and to give Pentagon such a huge amount of money are the same people who come from our communities who are supposed to be going there doing work on behalf of the people in sync with what the people feel provides safety and health. What do? They knock on our door for the vote, they get our vote, but they cut the deal with the big corporate interests that is going in the wrong direction, causing us more money more that we have to pay for healthcare that we can't even afford and don't yet have put enough money to ensure the quality of health. Money for education, there's no need for me to talk about it. We already know what is happening there. And when it comes to housing, it is a sad thing that in this nation, you got people laying all over the streets, many who are veterans. I'm a combat veteran of Vietnam. I sometimes tend to want to go right to the crux of this thing about what this whole issue is about, because we act like it's over our head. The truth is, as we fight climate, as we are concerned about the kind of energy we use in our communities, here we are allowing more money to be invested to replace our already more overly functioning nuclear arsenal. They're taking that money to build up something that is not clean energy, that cannot be stored anywhere safely, and it's part of what is affecting climate change. While we look here at the kinds of policies we try to set, what we're doing with this equipment is using it in other places of the world, causing destruction. And remember, you cannot fix half of the sky. So if we're damaging abroad, eventually all of the world will feel some kind of impact on that. And right now you have energy companies pushing for nuclear energy, even right here in New York State, when nuclear energy is not clean, renewable energy, and we should push back because we have the ability with the technology we have for a better way forward to a healthier living.
Amen to that, yes. When we hear, oh, we can't afford that, that means after we've paid for all the weapons, we won't be able to afford it. And the extreme spending on so-called modernizing nuclear weapons goes back to the Obama administration. It's not,
yes, indeed.
It's not just from yesterday. Thank you, yeah. Okay, Diane, you're in the Syracuse Peace Council and involved, like our other guests, with Peace Action of New York State. You have some thoughts about what to do about all this. Can we hear what they are?
Absolutely. The horror of nuclear weapons is emblazoned on the minds of people my age. Yoko's experience and that of the Hibakusha before her would be enough to crystallize our resolve. But when, in addition, Holly shows the current magnitude of nuclear danger, And Jim tells us the toll of these weapons that they take on our resources, even if they're never exploded. It's clear that we must act urgently with a focused strategy. A nuclear-free world is essential to human survival, and yes, it is possible. The Back from the Brink campaign is a coherent, focused, and achievable strategy. It educates and builds support at the grassroots while promoting national and international policy from the ground up. Many organizations, local, state, and national, have endorsed this campaign, as have many legislators. We work to increase this groundswell of community groups, national organizations, and public officials by presenting all of them with information about the campaign, eliciting their support, and publicizing it. This summer, there's a nationwide effort to get elected officials, especially mayors, to make proclamations renouncing nuclear weapons buildup and renouncing threats to use nuclear weapons. The campaign focuses on 5 common sense goals: no first use of nuclear weapons, take weapons off of hair trigger alert, remove the sole authority of any president to launch a nuclear attack without anyone else's input, and stop the program to upgrade nuclear weapons, and support the treaty for the prohibition of nuclear weapons that Holly spoke of. These goals are all addressed in one piece of legislation. It's called House Resolution 77, and you can read about it at preventnuclearwar.org. Preventnuclearwar.org is the website of Back from the Brink. To people who say this is a federal, not a local issue, Back from the Brink addresses legislators at local, county, and state levels. As elected officials, you have a solemn duty to do what you can to keep your constituents safe, and nuclear weapons are no exception. My mayor, Walsh of Syracuse, stated that supporting Back from the Brink was a no-brainer. In 2018, the Ithaca Nuclear Disarmament Group achieved passage of a resolution calling for the United States to pull back from the brink and prevent nuclear war. This group was also instrumental in an effort of the Central New York Episcopal Diocese to endorse the campaign. Their resolution passed their General Convention in the summer of 2022 and joined a growing number of such resolutions. Back from the Brink works to build a growing chorus of elected officials who together send a clear, compelling message to Washington. Nuclear weapons are a local issue. Our voices matter and need to be heard and heeded. This kind of pressure from the grassroots has moved federal officials in the past, and it can again. So I say to listeners, do you belong to an organization that might endorse the campaign? Will you make a proposal to do so? Our network has a PowerPoint presentation, sample letters, sample proclamations, and experienced activists to help you. Again, check out preventnuclearwar.org. In Ithaca, ask your mayor and other elected officials to issue a proclamation to call for abolishing nuclear weapons. Make sure to indicate to him how much money could be brought back to the district for housing, economic development, and sustainability, things that he has put at the front of his concerns. Again, you can find materials at preventnuclearwar.org. And Back from the Brink has a cluster of organizations, we call it a hub, in upstate New York that work together to promote these efforts. Again, that website is preventnuclearwar.org.
Preventnuclearwar.org. And I want to thank Holly for the research. You came up with a figure of just over $10 million for the cost of nuclear weapons coming from Ithaca. That's per year, right?
Yes.
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 $10 million per year of
Yes.
Ithaca's money going to nuclear weapons.
Just from Ithaca.
Let's go back to Youko Yamamoto now. I know you were presenting a dance performance, Bon Odori dance. in Kingston. Can you say a little about that dance
Sure.
in honor of peace?
Yes, but I had a question to Diane. Is that okay if I just start like that?
Yes,
I
yes.
am wondering, Diane, if we can extend that back from the Brink campaign to the, to bring it to Japan, including people from Japan. Is there any Japanese people included in that whole loop?
I think there are a couple of US-based Japanese people,
Okay.
but I love the idea and let's talk about it. Let's work on
Yes,
that.
yes, definitely. Okay. So those are the things I really wanted to find out what I can do to stop, to prevent, nuclear weapons. And for that, I came up with this idea of using the traditional Japanese Bon Odori summer festival. And, every time I try to start this conversation about what happened in the Hiroshima and Nagasaki, everybody kind of tried to avoid it every time. And they don't listen. They always wanted to conversation as this very famous phrase, don't forget Pearl Harbor. And, you guys started, we don't. They just don't even know the reality that, President Roosevelt just made it plan perfectly to make it happen. And there's many evidences for that, but it's not time to just talk about it. But so I got so frustrated, and I know what happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, even though just a part of it, but I witnessed, what happened. And I married was a man. He is a sculptor, and he's from Hiroshima, and he lost his brother with leukemia. And it's going there, it's happening there. War is not over. The radiation effect is not over. It's there. It's still there after 79 years. So I just wanted to use this fun festival platform to invite everyone. Hey, we have Japanese food, we have dancing performance, local musicians playing, and we have games, and we have this and that. So we have to say that we have to take actions now to prevent nuclear weapons and nuclear energy.
Let me thank you all. Holly Adams, Diane Swords, Youko Yamamoto, Jim Anderson. I'm Wayles Browne. This has been Ithaca DSA Presents.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3.